Hi, I'm Marc, Iskowitz, editor-at-large for MM+M, and welcome to the neuroscience of HCP behavior change. As readers probably know, because you read it here first, back in September, Relevate Health bought LevelX, which creates video games for doctors. And this video game content can be used in all phases of pharma marketing, from pre-launch to late life cycle. And to find out more about how Relevate plans to integrate this video game-based content into its omnichannel marketing approach, I'm joined by my special guests, George Griffith, who's EVP of Omnichannel Marketing, and Sam Glassenberg, who's founder and CEO of LevelX. Gentlemen, welcome and good morning.
Thank you, Marc. Pleasure to be here, man.
Absolutely.
Good morning.
Pleasure to have you both. So let's just start off with talking more about that headline. Why would a marketing agency buy a video game company? George.
Behavior change. That's the big thing. When you look at the 5 companies that Relevate Health has invested in and integrated to date, the common thread that knits all of these companies together is behavior change. We're trying to find companies that have proven operationalized solutions that really have a focus on changing HCP behavior. For every marketer listening out there today, when you think about what business you're in, it's not engagement. Engagement is kind of a means to an end. It really is, what behavior do we need to change to create the adoption of our brand? And when we think about the role that games play, it's one of the most impactful ways to provide deeper engagement and ultimately behavior change.
Right. Sam, would you like to elaborate on that point that George made about behavior change?
Right. So when we talk about just engagement in pharma marketing, traditionally, we're measuring engagement on programs in seconds, maybe tens of seconds. In our video game programs, we measure engagement in minutes. Games are able to drive an order of magnitude more engagement, but more importantly is what you're doing with that time. So while the doctor is playing, she's diagnosing the patient, ordering tests, identifying patients for different treatments. She might be prescribing, she might be playing with clinical study data. And so what we're doing here is we're actually driving meaningful behavior change at scale. And what this translates to is substantially higher script lift through your field force or through NPP programs, and a 70-point lift in net promoter scores on peer-to-peer programs and product theaters. And because all of these games are hosted in the cloud, there's no app install, there's no download. The games can literally be played inside an email, on an HCP website, as part of a speaker program. So it's truly omnichannel gaming.
Yeah, when you think about traditional pharma marketing with the rep kind of visiting the doctor, like you said, it was really measured in seconds, but this is measured in minutes. So it's really an order of magnitude greater engagement time, which then can set the stage for behavior change. So we'll talk more about that. Talk about that, the neuroscience behind behavior change. What's actually happening on a physiological level when people play video games, and how do you map that to pharma marketing?
So actually the video games industry is now bigger than the movie and music industries combined. How do we do that? So over the last 30 years, video game designers have distilled the neurochemical recipe for driving behavior change, driving engagement, driving learning among any audience. And we've been testing this on 3 billion unwitting test subjects. We figured out, how do you hit the perfect balance of reward and frustration, of challenge and skill, to literally maximize the release of neurochemicals in the brain, like dopamine, to drive neuroplasticity. And so when you unleash this in medicine, what we've essentially done is we've taken some of the top video game designers, folks who've been making consumer games played by hundreds of millions of people, and now what they've been doing is designing video game mechanics to drive specific behavior changes and learning in healthcare. So, for example, when we think about diagnosing rare disease, that's a reductive reasoning puzzle. When we think about longitudinal patient management, managing a patient through their journey, that's a strategy game. And what we're able to do is deploy these games across a dozen different therapeutic areas and to hundreds of thousands of HCPs.
And so what you're doing is you're reinforcing, or you're creating, say, a behavioral scientific change within the mind of the physician, so to speak. I think you use the example of recency bias, that then later, when they see such a patient in practice, it triggers that same recency bias. George, can you kind of build on how you see this kind of fitting into the omni-channel effort?
Absolutely. When you think of omnichannel, first and foremost, I think this is one of the most overcomplicated words that we brought in. I've been in marketing now for 32 years, and omnichannel is quite the electric word. But I'm going to simplify it for everyone out there today. Number one, first step when you do an omnichannel is you start with data and insights. I know that sounds pretty basic, but most pharmaceutical companies, you should go beyond your target list. You should look to find what insights do we have? Do we know what time of day they might open email? Which KOLs influence these targets that we're going to engage with? What videos do they like to watch? Who are they referring to and who is referring to them? This is all data that you have access to. But I think reflexively, most folks go, just give me a target list cross match and let's go, Joe. But really let's slow down and figure out how we can be more thoughtful with using data. Now, the next step is really the mindset or my philosophy around omnichannel, which is how do we deliver more precision, personalized, and relevant brand experiences, what I like to call PPR. All of us like to go. The reason Cheers was such a comfortable place for people to go is everybody knew your name. You want an experience where everybody understands where you are, if you would, in the brand's journey. So really being thoughtful about how we use that data and how we thread that in. Now, how we can do that, there are ways in which you can trigger, and we'll try to give some case studies maybe later on in this segment, around using diagnosis codes, around diagnostics tests, around what content or articles you've searched for or read recently, and really then bring the brand experience to you such that someone's like, wow, how did you know that this is where I needed to be? So step one, data and insights. Steps two, that precision, personalized, and relevant brand experience. And step three is how do you unify and orchestrate this? And let me explain that further. In a perfect world, you'd get with let's say you're on the non-personal team at your company. You'd get with the peer-to-peer, you'd get with the market access, you'd get with the field enablement, folks that are providing stuff for the field, and you'd lay all of the initiatives that you're doing out on the kitchen table, if you would. And you would say, how are these orchestrating and touching together such that it provides the HCP with that, wow, how did you know? How did you know I needed that experience? Most folks aren't there. Most people are kind of doing siloed omnichannel where they might do a non-personal series of touch points, which is fine. At least if you can start there and be thoughtful about how you knit these touch points together. But to me, that's omnichannel in essence. And that's what we're trying to do in this is take the behavior change and the omnichannel and knit those together.
You mentioned that the end goal here is to create an orchestrated brand experience for customers. Can you talk that through in terms of a real-life example? I think Sam mentioned earlier rare disease. Like, what might that look like?
Absolutely. So let's practice what we preached earlier about the steps of omnichannel, and let's start with step one, which was using data and insights. So what data and insights might we have on a rare disease? You might look at who's referring to them? Who are they referring to? Are they diagnosing the disease at the rate that someone in that specialty should be diagnosing it? Are they using the right diagnostic test to help identify that rare disease patient? So you can start, instead of just looking at the traditional target list and ready, go, now you start providing a more thoughtful approach to how you might engage this audience. And now that you have this bit of data, I believe you've said there's a game that we have that can ultimately help with the diagnosis or diagnosing a rare disease.
Right. There's a game for that.
There's a game for that, exactly.
There's an app for that. There's a game
for that. So this is where we have actually a specific game mechanic around disease diagnosis. So for the player, the patient presents, and it's a reductive reasoning puzzle. Patient presents with a chief complaint or whatever they would have coming into the clinic, and the player has to ask the right questions and order the right tests to not only figure out what the patient has, but eliminate the other differentials. So what we're able to do is we're able to raise diagnosis rates by actually triggering recency bias. A doctor is more likely to diagnose a disease she's seen recently, but you can actually trigger that same bias in their brain by having them diagnose that disease in a video game as long as you're exercising your reductive reasoning skills. And then we can take that game, we can deploy it, for example, at scale in an NPP program, and then pull data from that on a regular basis.
So I'll pick up, this is where it gets really cool. So now you're taking the physician level data and also what these HCPs did within the gameplay that week. And now you can feed that over, and now we connect another touch point. So let's say, I use the analogy, it's kind of like when we all go to the dentist and, we get to talk about we need to floss. So let's pretend we played the floss game, but yet we need to remember it that night. So imagine we put a sticky note on our mirror in our bathroom, and that creates that, okay, I'm going to do this tonight. So imagine now we get the NPIs of the individuals that have played the game, and we could even segment them into behavior categories about, whether they knew what to do or whether they didn't know what to do. Now we create what's called a business rules message map, and we're going to deploy messaging within their EHR workflow. So imagine saying, okay, when you see this rare disease patient, you get their diagnosis code, any diagnostics tests that might need to be run or that they might have had run, any products that they may have been prescribed that would indicate, man, I am seeing the right patient. Like, yes, I've simulated this in the video game. I know what to do now. Now you deploy a message in their workflow that is like that sticky note on the bathroom mirror that says, here's a reminder about the guidelines. Here's a recent clinical trial that would pull through. Here's how to dose. Here's financial savings. All the steps that you would need to pull through. So then there's more. So now you've got that EHR experience and who engaged. Now you pull, again, the physician level data out of that, and now you can retarget those HCPs. Again, a more precision, personalized, relevant experience. You could retarget them on endemic and non-endemic sites. You could send them a specific case-based email that summarizes what they've done. But all the while, the HCP that's receiving this is really feeling like they're being heard. They're being understood. Someone is really going, wow, I don't see this but 2 times a year, and someone's really there like my Jiminy Cricket helping me in this critical moment.
Sure.
So that's a good way.
Yes, that's a great example. So from the customer's perspective, they're getting that. They know me. How do they know I needed this perspective? In the background, what's happening is the game kind of established an equivalence that can later be sort of invoked, through that sticky note that you mentioned.
It's like a needs assessment in some ways of showing what this HCP knows and doesn't know.
Yeah, and it's sort of triggering that neural pathway, if you will, that perhaps was created by the game, by that dopamine release, when they figured out the right diagnostic code and it worked or whatnot.
When they ordered the biomarker test.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit, maybe perhaps a more relevant example for some folks out there, oncology. How might it look like there?
So I'll start, because all roads with our steps is data and insights. So that's one thing I want the audience to continue to remember. We got to start with what data do you have? And again, you've got data, other folks have data, other agencies you work with. Just start by asking that question versus just reflexively going after your cross-match target list. What might we know? What might we know? So what might we know could be, hey, what are the geographic areas that we need to focus on? Do we need to go to the entire United States? No, maybe it's just these pockets where you actually have positive formulary coverage. In those pockets of the country, who are the influential HCPs? I know reflexively we always use the big national KOLs, and they're great, but could we be more thoughtful and actually have a local key opinion leader that is respected by that thought leader? Again, what tests are they run? Who are they referring to? Who are they getting referred to? So once again, you have this data. There could be a game for that.
So when we think about, I think oncology is a great example because oncologists are absolutely bombarded with clinical study data. At ASCO, for example, I don't know, it's so hard to actually bring your clinical study data to life in a way that is memorable above the noise. And this is where video games are supremely effective. And for this, you need to really get back to evolutionary neurobiology. Humans love collecting things. Humans love trying to find hidden objects in complex scenes. That's why we all love playing Where's Waldo as a kid. The human brain loves to do this. And so what we've been able to do is create game mechanics where the HCP can actually play with the data. So you're searching for the data in a complex scene, or you're actually collecting the data to form the histogram. And then at the point of dopamine release, the point of reward, where you've collected all the data, boom, we hit you with a clinical study endpoint. And so if you're on your 15th clinical study, years into your life cycle, you're really able to differentiate that data and bring it to life, whether it's in an NPP program or whether it's at a product theater with 400 doctors playing together.
Mm-hmm.
So now, hold on. I don't mean to jump in front
Not
of
at
you.
all, please.
You've taken this game experience again. So now you have that physician level data. You have insights into what they were doing with the game. You can segment that. Now maybe you feed this to your sales force. And we talk about omnichannel. They're a part of a huge channel, if you would. And now they've got these insights. Now perhaps they show up at an opportune time and offer a webcast to their customer around a thought leader that they know influences them, talking about a specific area of gap that they might have. We learned that from the game. So it's kind of like that, how did you know? Or, wow, yeah, I'm in for that. That's very timely, when you show up at that timely moment. So now you have that experience, and then once someone engages with that, again, you connect that to the next experience, again, providing that precision, personalized, and relevant brand experience, which helps differentiate your brand.
Yep.
Sure.
And because we're tracking everything on a per NPI basis, we can see the outcomes and we can see the ROI.
Mm-hmm. So you really learn a lot from a game. You're collecting a lot of this physician-level data that can then be fed into and inform the rest of your omnichannel program.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good place. Again, any adult learning, we all go into college and we take tests, that kind of placement tests. It's like, okay, which level am I at certain levels? This is where doctors are with learning to treat a disease. Not everybody is at the A level. If you're here, that's great. That's your baseline, and thus you should be educated along the way to help you grow to where you want to get to. But if everybody's treated equally with the same experience, you don't get there.
Yeah, right.
And the beauty of games is we can actually distill definitive insights. You can present an HCP and see, even unbranded, when presented with this patient, what decisions does she make? What tests does she order? Does she keep the patient on a steroid or put the patient on a biologic? And unlike if you just ask a question, the doctor will always, this is neuroscience. The doctor will always give you the textbook answer or the answer that, they think you want to hear. But when you present them, when you suspend disbelief and you present them with a patient case where they're engaged, and you're exercising their reductive reasoning skills, their logical skills, their cognitive decision making. Now you can actually see how they behave, and you can use that to really understand what's driving their underlying behavior. What's the why?
Mm-hmm. Which really is very informative from a marketing perspective. But what I find really fascinating is both components of this. First of all, mapping different clinical challenges like a differential diagnosis to a puzzle game or a treatment challenge to a strategy game, and then the piece about how it fits into the greater omnichannel marketing efforts and that fit there, and really how it complements the omnichannel program.
Yeah.
Really, really fascinating stuff. And then how you learn more about the doctor that can then really inform and make the customer feel like, they know me. How did they know I needed that? It's
right.
Really sort of helps bring to fruition, if you will, the vision of omnichannel marketing. Anything you want to say, sort of parting words for our audience?
I would say, we started with behavior change. I'll finish with behavior change. If there's anybody, all marketers should be able to define what behavior they're wanting to change. And it could be, as step one, we need to just simply create awareness. Step two, it could be, we need to be able to teach this. Like, these HCPs don't know how to do this. If you can define that, that's a great step. If you don't, give us a call. We can help you with that exercise. But it's a good place to begin as a marketer, to be able to understand what behavior you want to change.
Absolutely. Great starting point. Sam, last word?
At the end of the day, all of this technology, all of these approaches are all in the service of behavior change. If you could get inside the brain of your HCP and rewire it, change the way they dose, change the way they diagnose, change the way they identify patients for treatment, change the way they think about clinical study data, what would you change? Because that is the ultimate goal of everything we're doing here.
It's not just about engagement, it's about behavior change.
Exactly.
Great. Well, we're going to call it there. Thank you to my special guests, Sam and George. This is fascinating. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.